There are certain things in the galaxy that are ominous, dark, and truly haunting. We've heard tales of entire planets being destroyed by superweapons, the very souls of worlds being drained by godlike forces, and other catastrophic events. But what about smaller, more insidious horrors? What about the man behind the scenes? The one who devises terrifying mechanisms, conducts gruesome experiments on the weak, or even, dare I say, toy with the gods? Keep these questions in mind because on today's episode of Who Is, we're diving into a story of one of the most vile and twisted scientists in the Star Wars galaxy. Stand by for the ominous tale, and let's discover who is JARAK. Normally when exploring figures like this, we'd begin with their origins, where they're from, their lineage, but in JARAK's case, that history has been lost to time. What we do know, however, is that his most infamous work took place between 3680 BBY and 3630 BBY, years before the Battle of Yavin. Despite the lack of direct records on his early life, we can glean some insights from his pieces and cultural background. JARAK was an Animid, a species known for their technological advancements and peace philosophy. The Animids hailed from Beilert, a planet in the Outer Rim territories, and were renowned for their contributions to hyperdrive technology. Yet, despite their technological prowess, they were an isolationist society, choosing to keep themselves and live in peace. According to the Star Wars Ultimate Alien Anthology, Animids were, quote, peaceful intellectuals, intensely curious about cultures across the galaxy. The book further states that the Animids who leave their homeworlds are usually nonconformists, who disagree with the laws and philosophies of their peers, wanderlusting youngsters, technology hunters, or corporate travelers. This information is crucial because it highlights just how much of an outlier JARAK was amongst his people. Unlike the vast majority of his kind who valued knowledge and pacifism, he pursued something much darker. His work was highly advanced, valued by some, yet its applications were horrifying. Experiments so unethical that even his technologically driven colleagues condemned them. With such a psychological profile, it was only a matter of time before someone took an interest in his research. And just as inevitable was JARAK's willingness to abandon his people and align himself with those who sought power above everything else. So what exactly was JARAK working on? At its core, his research focused on the brain, but not in the way one might expect from a conventional scientist. JARAK's studies delved into the mind control and brainwashing of others, pushing the boundaries of science and mortality alike. His methods were brutal, his experiments inhumane, and while he did achieve a level of mind control, his techniques came with horrific side effects, delirium, psychosis, and in almost 90% of those cases, death. Word of his gruesome work spread throughout the scientific underground, attracting attention from those who saw potential in his research. Among the many interested parties was one that stood out above the rest, and an offer that would change JARAK's fate forever. The offer came from none other than the Eternal Emperor himself, Valkorion, and it was simple.
Work for the Eternal Empire, and beyond riches, I will provide you with unlimited resources, your very own facilities, full control over all methods and research, but perhaps most importantly, complete reign over your designs and all you need to complete them.
For a man like JARAK, this was irresistible. Without hesitation, he accepted and he disappeared from the records of his homeworld, aligning himself with one of the most powerful men in galactic history. JARAK then relocated to Nathema, a planet with a dark past. You see, centuries prior, in 4999 BBY, Nathema had been subject to a ritual so vile that it drained the planet of all life. This ritual, performed by Lord Vitiate, later known as Valkorion, who we're dealing with now, left the world a barren, deathly void, an ideal place for JARAK'S unspeakable experiments. But Valkorion had a very specific project in mind for his new scientist. Among JARAK'S many tasks, one was of the highest priority: condition the Emperor's daughter, Valen. JARAK'S work on Valen was nothing short of monstrous, because it was a culmination of all his prior work. He subjected her to brutal tests, including physical and psychological torture, exposure to the suffering of others, forced chemical ingestions, neural implants, and other grotesque procedures. The goal was to mold her into the ultimate enforcer for the Emperor, powerful, obedient, and utterly devoid of resistance, a new vessel for him to take on later on. To Valkorian's satisfaction, JARAK succeeded, but this wasn't without cost. You see, the countless others subjected to his mind control experiments were left dead, broken, or in a permanent vegetative state. Forgotten souls lost the relentless pursuit of knowledge. JARAK was not merely a scientist, he was a butcher of the mind and body. Now, years later, Valen would return to Nathema, seeking to undo what had been done to her. JARAK, faced with the threat of death, had no choice but to reverse the very conditioning he had inflicted upon her. However, in doing so, he unleashed a force he could not control. Valen's power surged, the facility around him began to collapse, and in a desperate attempt to escape, JARAK fled into the Emperor's vault, a place of forbidden knowledge, filled with dangerous artifacts, holocrons, and the lingering spirits of ancient Sith. Now, Valkorian had long warned that the vault contained artifacts too dangerous to be tampered with, or even opened again in that vault. But JARAK, in his cowardice and arrogance, ignored the warning and ran straight into the ancient room. Within moments of entering, he was brutally killed by a vault guardian. A poetic and ironic end for the man who had spent his life playing with forces beyond his control. See, JARAK's death was not his greatest tragedy. Rather, it was the fact that his victims, countless in numbers, were lost to history, their lives thrown away for dark experimentation that benefited no one but the most evil people in society. And so, the scientist who subjected so many to heinous, dangerous, and brutal tortures, controlling their minds and achieving the darkest accomplishments, met his end in a vault of forbidden knowledge, never to be seen or learned from again. So what do you think of JARAK and his vile experimentation on the mind and body? Would you have liked to know more about his early life or the story of his victims? And if he had survived, where do you think his research would have taken him? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like this video to help the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe, and may the Force be with you always.